Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. We will begin in a few minutes. All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Asian Pacific Month celebration kickoff event tonight, Southeast Asian Representation in Cinema, featuring our guest speaker, Dr. Steve Arounsack. My name is Ali Reza Kashani, and I am the coordinator of first-year programs and member of the Asian Pacific Month Committee at Elgin Community College. Asian Pacific Month, which is also known as the Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, is a national celebration that celebrates the culture, traditions, and history of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the United States during the month of May. Throughout this month, we will be highlighting famous Asian Americans and local restaurants from different Asian cuisines, so don't forget to check us out on our social media pages every week. Shortly in the chat, you will see a few links to our social media, so you can kind of see what we have going on for this month. Tomorrow, learn about the history of anti-Asian racism, model minority stereotypes, Asian identity, and hear from the panelists about their perspective on anti-Asian hate during our next Asian Pacific Month event called Asian American Perspective on Anti-Asian Hate at 7 p.m. With the climate of our society today of anti-Asian rhetoric, this is an important event that we wanted to incorporate during our Asian Pacific Month celebration. Tonight's event is a celebration of the Asian culture in cinema. And before we continue, please make sure to sign in for tonight's event for a special raffle that Lily will tell us all about. Right, Lily?
Yes, Ali. Okay. Well, thank you, Ali, and good evening, everyone. I'm Lily Koksayo. I'm one of the administrative assistant in Student Life Office and a member of the Asian Pacific Month Committee at Elgin Community College. As Ali mentioned earlier, please make sure to sign in for tonight's event. At the end, we will be choosing a random guest to win a private movie screening of Raya and the Last Dragon. The winner has to be present at the time of the announcement to stay tuned about it, okay? We're so excited for tonight's event, and we hope that you will enjoy hearing from our guest speaker, Dr. Steve Arounsack. We will have a Q&A at the end, so please make sure to hold any question until the end or type them in the chat room. A little bit about Dr. Steve Arounsack. Dr. Steve Arounsack is a professor of cultural anthropology at California State University and an award-winning visual anthropologist with a strong background in community storytelling and digital media production. Dr. Arounsack has the visual anthropologist and lead cultural advisor for Disney animation studio Raya and the Last Dragon, which is the studio first feature film inspired by Southeast Asian cultures. With over 20 years of media experience across the production spectrum, his film has been showcased on PBS and a prominent Asian American film festival. And his interactive kiosks have been installed at national exhibition. He directed Getting Loud, the seminar, a documentary about the modern music and film revolution in Laos. He also served as the co-director of the Between Two Worlds project and told stories of refugees from Laos. Dr. Arounsack is the recipient of a coveted Center for Asian American Media documentary grant where he produced Next Gen Asian American Art, a documentary that won multiple awards and aired across the nation on PBS. He was also a part of the inaugural class of National Gate Millennium Scholar and won a prestigious Sony Electronic Award for innovative teaching. So it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Steve Arounsack.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm so glad that you all took some time out of your evening to join us. I'll make the talk, or at least my presentation part of it, as informative and as impactful as possible. Let's just get started here. So this is going to talk through some of my experiences with the film. We're going to go through how I break down scenes and some behind the scenes pictures that the public hasn't really seen yet. So this is really the first public talk that I've given that really goes into specific detail. So I'm thrilled to be here, and let's get started. So as we frame this discussion, I like to think of Southeast Asia as a constellation of unique and connected cultures. And my role on the film was, I was a visual anthropologist on what was called the Southeast Asia Story Trust. So before we get started, we just wanted to grease the wheels a little bit and just get the motion going by showing a trailer of it. So it just reminds everyone of what we're talking about. So this is a trailer for Raya and the Last Dragon.
All right, guys, remember what we're looking for. And don't trust anyone.
Whoa, what?
Hey, baby. Where are your parents? Hey, who's baby? What? Really? A cod baby? Impressive. We could use someone like you. Let's catch you up. My name is Raya. Our lands have been at war for as long as we can remember. Our people never see eye to eye.
My daughter, I believe our people can come together again, but someone has to take the first step.
Now, in order to restore peace, we must find the last dragon.
I wish to join this fellowship of butt-kickery.
Let's go. We'll have to watch our backs. We're not the only ones looking. 6 years of searching. Please let this be it.
Oh, mighty Sisu!
Who said that?
We really need your help.
I'm gonna be real with you. I'm not like the best dragon. Have you ever done like a group project, but there's like that one kid who didn't pitch in as much, but still ended up with the same grade?
We're doomed.
You and the dragon are coming with me.
My sword here says we're not. The world's broken. You can't trust anyone.
Maybe it's broken because you don't trust anyone. You just have to take the first step. I just shape changed.
Dragons can do that?
Look how close my butt is to my head. It's gonna make digestion so much faster.
In cinemas or order it on Disney Plus with Premier Access this March.
Okay, hopefully that reminded everyone of the movie that we're about to discuss. If for those of you that are willing and that have the inclination, as many people that can turn on their webcams would really help me sort of read the room. And that's something that I miss being in front of a live audience, is sort of read the room and the pulse. So for those of you that can and that are willing, I'd love to see y'all. So,
All right, guys.
So as we start on this journey, I wanted to explain what my role was. And my role was to provide a comprehensive review of all the visual elements and the cultural themes to the movie. I worked with our wonderful PR department and the marketing team to look at all the merchandising that's going on. So I helped to develop some of the guidance that went into the development of all the things that you see at Target, all these places online. So I got a chance to review some of that material. And also as the movie moved on, as it was released, I was able to work with the PR team to review the text that would go out. And so how we would frame and making sure that the research supported accurately what we wanted to portray throughout the region. Okay, because we have 11 countries in Southeast Asia, something like 650 to 700 million people, very diverse, unique, and connected. So the first shot you see in the movie is this. So I like to make my talks a little bit interactive. So I don't mind if someone wants to chime in and go back and forth. I know that we're gonna devote a specific time to the Q&A, but I don't mind the back and forth. There's plenty of time. My talk is not that long, but I love the interaction. So this first scene that you see here, and we held this scene for quite a bit. Does anybody want to type in the chat line to see if they know what this is? There's a reason why we showed it the first shot. It's the very first shot of the movie. Anyone? Buddhist statue? Not quite. So what we wanted to do was to let people know that we're not in Kansas anymore. What you see there is a replica and something that's inspired by a spirit house. So we're not in Kansas. We want to let you know that we're someplace really unique and special that the big screen hasn't really seen before. So it represents a spirit house. Okay, so we're not in Kansas. And I wanted to go through two scenes of how I analyzed our movie. So I wanted to give the opportunity for you to come into my mind a little bit as to what I would look at as we develop scenes, okay? So there's a lot going on here in this scene. Some of the top line items that we're gonna see gonna be the hat, the warrior hat there. That shape of that hat is very unique. And when we see a hat like that, we can often think of sort of the stereotypical conical Asian hat. And we wanted to break that mold a little bit and reclaim the pride that's in these hats. So we took a mixture of taking common day elements, which would be like rattan, and mixing it with something that is extremely meaningful. And the shape of the hat is inspired by an elemental approach. And what that means is this hat can be looked at in terms of being inspired by the shapes of stupas in the area. They're going to be, so stupas are these structures that are on temple grounds. And the stupas can be viewed in two ways, as I mentioned before. One is an elemental approach, which looked at the shape, the base of the hat represents water, and the dome as it goes up represents, the shape of the base of the hat represents the earth, and the dome represents water. So it really is a combination and the relationship between water and the earth. Another thing that it represents is that it tapers to a finite point. And what that represents is this tapered journey to clarity. So that's what we looked at in terms of the shape of the hat. Another top line feature is, of course, Raya's sword. It's wavy, it's inspired by the Kris or the Keris or the Kalis in different places in Southeast Asia. And it's wavy, it's a wavy blade, it's a spiritual blade. And these are the two top line items. So we made sure that they had prominence in the scenes that we shot. Another major feature is that in the back that's another representation of a spirit house. So spirit houses can come in many different forms, and that really speaks to the diversity of Southeast Asia. You can have one item, but it can be manifested in many different ways in all the different countries. So this speaks to the core theme of diversity in the area. We're going to see lanterns all throughout many parts of marketplaces. So we see lanterns in the Philippines, we see lanterns in Vietnam, in Hoi An, we see lanterns in Laos after the Buddhist Lent concludes. So we see lanterns in many different parts of Southeast Asia. Other major elements would be like how we hold food. So this particular way of holding fish, you can interpret it in two ways. One is the fish can be live in there. Two is that in Southeast Asia, fermented fish is often put in these jars. So we wanted to make sure that we said, okay, we know that the way that the region holds their fish can be diverse, but it's also distinct because very few places would hold fermented fish in this way. Now you put all these things together and you get a pretty unique sense that this is someplace very different, right? It's going to smell a certain way. It's going to look a certain way. And our top line items with the warrior hat and the blade, again, are going to lead much of the scenes as we watch the movie. Okay, so this is one way that I broke down a scene just to make sure that we infuse it with as much cultural specificity as possible, right? Without overburdening the scene and without really pushing it and without being too strong with it. It's there, it's real, and we see the region. Another scene that I really wanted to take a look at. So I worked pretty closely with the team on Sisu, the water dragon. And so again, she's in the title. These are two of our names in the title. We have Raya there and we have Sisu. So what do I look at and what do I look for? Well, I look to make sure that the color palette leans cool because she's a water dragon or water serpent, inspired by a water serpent in the region, which is the naga, right? In the Philippines, it's the bakunawa. In Malaysia, it's the serigumam from Chini Lake. And in places like Indonesia, Laos, Thailand, and Cambodia, they're referenced by different names, but they're commonly known as the naga. In Laos, particularly, for all my Laotians out there, she's called the nguak. Try to say that 5 times fast, nguak. So what do I look for Sisu? Probably first and foremost is her crest. This is the defining feature because elevation plays such an important role in our movie. That's one thing I would suggest you go back into. If you want to go back and rewatch the movie, think of where people's eye lines are and where their heads are in relation to others. Sisu's crest here, because it's so majestic and because we hold her in such reverence, she'll almost always be higher in every scene. So the crest is one. Another feature for Sisu is she has a long serpentine body. It's not this muscular sort of Game of Thrones dragon, Western dragon that we see. She doesn't have wings. She doesn't fly. Now you see her in the air in the movie, but that's because she's dancing on raindrops. And that's a creative way for us to get her to be mobile, right? So we talked about the head elevation. Look where Raya's head is in relation to Sisu's head and crest, always down. Another aspect of this scene I want you to take note of is, see that gem, that broken gem piece? It's not laying flat on the ground. Anything of significance is always put off of the floor. So we put it on a rock there. What's another major feature of this scene is there's a little bit of a waterway. In almost every scene that you see Sisu in, she's connected to water. We wanted to subconsciously and consciously get people to think about the water association with Sisu. Okay, this is how I break down this is partly how I break down these scenes. And so again, you put all these things together and you're beginning to get the sense that we have two characters that have been brought together within the story, and that especially Sisu, she has some cultural anchors that really bring her to a specific place in the world, and that's Southeast Asia. Okay. Now, 11 countries, unique and connected. So where do we find this inspiration? Well, the Nagas are found in these different regions here, right? So I said in the Philippines, you have the Bakunawa. In Malaysia, you have the Serigumam. And you have what's commonly known as the Naga in mainland Southeast Asia and even in Indonesia. And then our writer, our co-writer, Kui Nguyen, really helped to bolster the importance of the action part of it, right? Martial arts and the weaponry. So we took different inspirations. Of course, we have Muay Thai. We've got the scissor grappling styles and the kicks from Vietnam. We have obviously from Malaysia and from Indonesia. Does anybody know what that fighting style is? Any Indonesians or Malaysians out there? Pencak Silat. So that's where we have all of these weapons coming in, right? At the top of the movie, you see the arnis or the eskrima sticks coming out. That was a special nod to the Philippines. And then we have the Krabi Karbong blades from Thailand. And of course, the kris, right? That would be from the Malay and the Indonesian regions. And then the warrior headgear, the hat, again, from the everyday materials, the rattan. So it's kind of a blend between the everyday person and also very important meanings throughout the region. So we combine things like, what would a warrior's helmet look like in the region? And we found inspirations from all these different places. And as we step back, we look at this and we say, wow, look at all the connections we see. And one of the things that I wanted to really impart on the film is to make sure that we were close enough to see those connections. Because the problem is that sometimes if we zoom too far out, things get really muddled and hazy and you can't make anything out, and then it becomes too generic. But you almost have to get it into sort of this perfect framing to where if you're too close, it gets really too specific and we're not speaking broadly enough. You go too far and it becomes way too general. So we framed it, or at least I thought of it, in terms of a constellation of all these connections, all these unique cultures being connected. Now, representation. So what does it look like? Who is responsible for much of the creativity that goes into the film, right? So we do these, sometimes these press junkets. I've been involved in a couple of them, but folks like Adele Lim, Kui Nguyen, Fawn Virasanton, now they're some of the principal decision makers in terms of where this goes creatively. So representation does matter. And that's part of a much broader conversation, I think. And we think about who's making the decisions, who gets to go in front of the directors to pitch their ideas. And it's these folks here. And who do they reflect? When we hold a mirror to our society, what do we see? Do we see ourselves? And I can say that the creative team behind this, there's a lot of diversity. We have Vietnam, Malaysia, Laos, Thailand represented here. So I thought that we provided some pretty good anchors for the team as we move forward with the creative choices of the movie. Now, obviously, we just scratched the surface. If you want to get to know really down to the nitty-gritty of how the designs, the thought process behind the characters and the environments, I suggest you take a look at the Art of Raya book. And the Art of Raya book really goes into great detail. It's beautiful, and it's written by our very own Kaliko Hurley. And I was not sure. And Kaliko's actually on this call, so I want to give her a special shout out. And this is an amazing book. It's available on Amazon. Amazon, got a couple copies through Amazon. So yeah, Amazon's probably the quickest way. I think it's also available in Target if I remember correctly. But yeah, definitely on Amazon though. So that's where, if you want to get to specific details, that's where you're going to get the information. Okay. Now, so I'm going to take you on the journey, and I'll make this part quick so I can get to the discussion part and answer as many questions as possible. So this is a picture I took when we did the Basi ceremony at Walt Disney Animation Studios. Gosh, when was it? Was it last year? Yeah, it must have been really early in 2020. And what you see there is a cloth that's called a papillon, which is worn across our chest when we enter sacred spaces. And this is what we brought to the studio. So I thought, what do we bring to the studio? And we bring our culture there and in the spirit of sharing. Okay, so this is, again, these are going to be pictures that were part of the journey that I took with the visual development team and the co-directors and the head of story and some of the creative voices behind the movie. I took them to northern Laos for roughly a week. So you're going to see some pictures, some behind the scenes pictures, and then a screen grab of what the movie has. It's not saying that that particular incident in Laos was the only inspiration for these scenes. I would say it's one of the pieces that they took with them that gave them a strong feeling of what that area was like. So it's just one of the points of inspiration. It's not the only point of inspiration. So what we see here is that first day when I took the team out, the person you see in front here, that's Fawn Virasanton. She's the head of story. And we took her on this hilltop temple, which is much like what we see here. This is not a temple, this is a palace here, but the idea of having elevation play a prominent role is that places of importance are held up really high. So that's one of the things that we looked at, right? So they got a bird's eye view of this entire city in northern Laos, Luang Prabang specifically. Okay, and I kind of put them through the ringer on the first day. As soon as they got off the plane, we got into the van, and I made them walk up that hill. It's more than a hill; it's about 330 steps. So you get off a flight, your advisor says, "Hey, let's go check this place out," and then he makes you walk up 300 some odd steps. So they were huffing and puffing up there, but on the way there, they began to see some of the iconography of the region and some of the important symbols that we have. And that would be the Naga herself here. They began to see the long serpentine form. They begin to see the crest. And these are some of the inspirations that made its way into the movie. Okay, so we have elevation and now we have symbology, or semiotics as the academics put it. We're beginning to get a sense. So imagine if I said that something was really high and I just show them a picture and say, hey, that would be a wonderful view up there, right? They would go, okay, well, that's neat. But now we made them go up, so they knew how high it was with the exhaustion in their blood. We wanted to make things feel tactile. It was in Luang Prabang. This is right in the middle of Luang Prabang. And we went to, again, very high places. I wanted them to get a sense of elevation. So our team, that's Scott Sakamoto there with, looks like Paul Felix and John Ripa. John Ripa was there. He was a co-director of this movie. So with this sense of elevation, you're going to get to see the landscape in a much different way, right? We get to see water manifest itself in many different ways. You get to see the river there. You get to see the fog and the mist come up, and you get to see the clouds. It's just all the different variations and forms that water can take. So elevation and water now really becoming fused in their experience. And one of the most fantastic scenes in the whole movie, and this is a presentation that doesn't contain spoilers, so we're not going to talk about what actually happens in the movie for those of you that haven't seen it. So this is a spoiler-free. But one of the most spectacular scenes is a fight scene that happens between Raya and Amari. We have to get a sense of what it feels like there and how light refracts off of different environments. And the environment in Southeast Asia is pretty thick, and light refracts in a very different way. So there's a lot of gold in very sacred places. And the person you see there, that's Helen Chen. She's a world-renowned visual development artist. And she led the charge on making sure that the environments were really, well, they're always spectacular when she does it, but particularly in Southeast Asia, we worked with her to make sure that it had some real anchors to the region. And this is one of the most beautiful scenes in the movie. Then we talk about how all these lands are connected, and the lands are connected through this waterway inspired by the Mekong River, the mother of rivers. And this shot that you see here is when the co-directors explained the movie to me for the first time. So I got a chance to sort of hear the whole arc of what they were thinking about. So we were on a boat, this lazy boat that went down the Mekong. And we had a chance for a couple hours just to get to know each other and build this sense of trust. It was only us on this boat, and we had a chance to really speak freely about some of the ideas that we thought the movie could use. So again, so this is that first time that I really got the lay of the land in terms of what the movie, or the direction of the movie. And we made sure that the team, got a chance to experience life along the river. So we stopped at various places and we got a chance to interact with the locals there. So the whole team got to experience this. It wasn't just the co-directors or the directors themselves. The entire team got to experience all these things together. And we had some local tour guides there as well. So it wasn't just us being detached from life and just watching it by. We stopped at various places and we interacted. We got a chance to see what life was like and talk to the people there. So Boon's boat, as he went down the river, we got a chance to go on a small boat at the top of this waterfall in Tat Kong Si, which is also in Luang Prabang. Okay, so I imagine one of these people is sort of like the Boon in my mind, because they're holding that way to steer the boat there. So that was a fun time on that boat. But we got a chance to see what it was like to be on a little boat. So hopefully that influenced the movie a bit. So we paid attention to details. We always sort of debriefed after every major session. So we had sessions where we sat around and just talked. Said, okay, what lessons did we learn today? How could this be incorporated? What could this look like for the rest of the world? We took a lot of pictures, took a lot of videos, And one of the things I wanted to also impart was the tactile sensation of life there. So we took part in different activities that got their hands dirty, that made their backs hurt, that got their fingers dirty. All of these things got them frustrated. And they just got a small glimpse of what life was like in those villages along the river in northern Laos. And of course, food. This picture is particularly funny because on this night, we went to dinner. And the three people that you see here are very well known in their circles, right? You've got Helen Chen there on the left-hand side, or my right in the picture. Fawn in the red shirt, and the person in the back. Does anybody know who that is? Shiyoon Kim. If you guys have seen Into the Spider-Verse, he was responsible for the visual development of the major characters like Miles, for example. So he's very well known, super talented. He helped with the early development of Raya and many of the characters. So anyway, so what makes this picture kind of funny is that after we had dinner, everyone was headed back to their hotels. And these three decided to say, we're going to go look for some snacks. We had 2 full cars waiting of the directors and the other VizDev people, and they were lost. And of course, no one knows the town. I'm the only person that knew the town. So I had to go look for these folks. And where did I find them? They were just running around buying all these snacks. And I don't even know how they would have found us because their cell phones weren't working at the time. But so this delayed us a little bit, and it was just funny. So as soon as I found them, I said, okay, let's take a quick picture. You can see all of them are super happy here, but the people who were in the van had a much different look on their faces when they were waiting that long. But yeah, so we can look back at it and laugh a bit now. But yeah, I found them snacking. Yeah, and they're all super fun and super creative. Yeah, so they're just snacking. That's why I had to show this picture. So I'm sorry, guys. I outed you a bit, but you guys were taking a while. That's why I had to go find you. And of course, the food. It's just one of the things you do wherever you go, and particularly in Southeast Asia. We made sure that everyone came back probably 5 to 10 pounds heavier. That if that was the if that's all we did, I considered it a victory because they're going to leave with something at least. All the different kinds of food that we saw there, from street food, restaurant food. We wanted to make sure they experience a spectrum of food. Okay. And this is the soup that we saw in the movie here. And so we went from simple dishes to very fancy places. So again, the idea of making sure that they had enough tactile and aromatic experiences, that really, I think, added to the movie. Now, when we're eating together, these are the times that we really began to gel. Because everyone's more relaxed, right? When your stomach's happy, your ears tend to be a little bit more open because you have to close your mouths and your ears have to get open. You shouldn't talk with your mouths full, but that's the reason why we had to stuff a lot of people's mouths just to make sure that they had a chance to get their ears open a little bit more. That's part of the beauty of eating together, is getting closer and being forced to listen. But your stomach's happy at the same time, so it's a win-win for everyone. But so this idea of coming together, sharing the experiences of the day and just kind of unwinding, that was really special. I think that informed a lot of the meals that we saw in the movie. And then now, we can't overlook the cultural importance of what the people there go through. So you can imagine after a couple of days, right? We ran them pretty hard all day. And then we had this bright idea and said, hey, do you guys want to get up at 4:30 tomorrow morning? We didn't wait for a response of a yes or no. I think Scott Sakamoto and I just sort of made the executive call and said, okay, let's just do it, because they need to see what the average citizenry goes through. And that's the almsgiving every single morning where the monks are fed. And it feeds to this idea of community and communitas and trust, because these monks, they don't make their own food. So they rely on, they trust the community members to give them a little bit of food. So if everybody gives a little bit, then they have enough to eat. So that was part of the message. And again, if we just give them a pamphlet that said this, it wouldn't have been as impactful as if we made them get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning before sunrise. This is before sunrise. And this is at my cousin's house. And again, I think as many of them are praying now, I'm pretty sure that Shiyun or a couple of the other artists are actually just napping there. Now that I look at this again, I'm pretty sure of it. See, Shiyun right there, his head's down pretty low. I think if he goes down any further, he might fall. So the idea of these cultural anchors that brings experience home. And some of the scenes were inspired by the importance of these cultural practices. So this is a Basi ceremony, and that's Fawn there. And we did that towards the end, I think the last day, right before they left, to wish them well. So the Basi is a calling of the soul, because in everyday life, our soul gets disconnected, and this ceremony kind of brings us back and recenters our soul and calls back the soul, so we're in balance again. And we do this for auspicious occasions where there's someone sick, coming from a long journey, going to a long journey. So we wanted to wish them well as they journeyed home. So this trip really began to solidify our relationship and open the lines of communication that shaped the movie. And this is the shot that we have of my family there in Luang Prabang and the team around a very modest pakwan for the Basi ceremony. And 5:42, Ali.
That's great. Thank you so much. We appreciate all the wonderful information, the representation of the culture in the movie, and in general, all the work that it takes to go about doing that. It's really interesting to hear that, all the details. We sometimes overlook those little things, and it's good to hear that there's so much work that's being done. It's great work too, so we definitely appreciate it. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I'm definitely going to do it now. So it's been on my to-do list for a while, so I'm going to check it out. So so thank you very much. Really wonderful presentation. If you can give a virtual clap, celebration, celebratory thing with the emojis, go ahead and do that right now. I would really appreciate your time being here. We do have a couple questions that were in the chat. I will go ahead and read them off. So the first one was from Tony. He asked, not trying to spoil the film, but what are the Drun based on?
So the Drun, so the Drun are these, they're sort of the evil forces of the movie. And without giving away too much, they feed on all of the negativity and all of the discord that we have in society. So the more discord we have, the stronger they get.
Awesome. I'm gonna read you another question that was early in the chat, then we'll get to the most recent one in there. This was from Tord5. Of all the Lao names, who chose Boone for that character?
So that's probably Todd. He's a friend of mine, and so Todd, the name Boone was a collective decision at the beginning. It was one of the names that Fawn, Scott, and myself pitched to Oznat, who's the producer of the movie, and we felt like these names better reflected the region, and they agreed, and we moved forward with it. And Boone can mean one of a couple different things. Boone can also mean merit, and it can also mean celebration. So it was a collective decision early on by Fawn, Scott, and myself, and Oznat.
Awesome. We have one more question in the chat. How did you come about deciding on Raya's companion animal?
I think that was done by the co-directors early on. I think it was Paul Briggs and his team. that came up with this name. I mean, the name of a tuk-tuk obviously is, you know, a taxi cab or like a rickshaw in Southeast Asia. In many parts of Southeast Asia, it's called tuk-tuk because that's a sound that it makes, you know, as it takes off. But yeah, that was a decision that was earlier on by, it was headed by Paul Briggs, one of the co-directors. Because it takes you places, right? Tuk-tuk takes you places. It's your trusty steed.
Great, thank you. We have another question in the chat, and I'll read it. Did you feel a heavy weight to try to represent the Southeast Asian region? Adding on to try to represent equally, what was the process like? 11 countries is a lot.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, it was a responsibility on all of us. And, you know, I just helped to make sure that the research was sound. And, you know, having gone to most of those countries in Southeast Asia, you know, I felt like my grounding was pretty solid. I've been traveling back and forth there for almost 30 years now. So I just made sure that the research was sound, and we made sure that we had as many voices as possible. It was really a team effort. I mean, if you look at the Southeast Asia story trips, we've got people from Indonesia, you know, a linguist, you know, a Balinese dancer, and people that played the gamelan, which is the music from Indonesia. And, you know, we had an architect, not an architect, well, yeah, an architect from Thailand and an archaeologist from Cambodia. So we had a strong stable there.
Great. We have one more question in the chat. Keep them coming, guys. If you have them, just put them in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question too. May have missed it earlier. How long was the team there, and did they visit multiple cities?
So I was responsible for the portion in Laos, and we really only had time to visit northern Laos and principally Luang Prabang. And we traveled through quite a bit of the province, not just the city itself, but we went you know, up and down the Mekong River. I know that right before Laos, they went to Cambodia, and before that, they were in Indonesia. But I wasn't a part of those trips. I was only a part of the trip to Laos.
Great. I think we have one more question. Let me unmute them real quick.
Right. Yeah, thank you. So I had a question. Actually, I have several questions. I'm so sorry. So I had a question within regarding designing some of the props, or not really like designing, but like part of it like symbolism. So you had mentioned that in the beginning, I think like the second frame that you showed, it was talking about Raya's hat and the symbolism regarding that. But was there any part of like what is it, the scriptwriters, was there anything where they asked you to say maybe this is a different character choice, like such as having a different set of how do I word this? I was sorry. So
That's okay.
what I'm asking primarily is, did you work along with them for like the entirety of it, or you just gave them this trip and sort of helped advise them, or did they come to you, or what was this?
So it was actually a collaboration. Yeah, it was a collaboration for over 2 years. So I was with them from this trip, which happened in early, gosh, it was early 2019. Now that I think about it, it's been a couple of years. Yeah, so it was a lot of back and forth and countless discussions in those few years. I went down to the studio a couple times. But yeah, it was a prolonged and engaged level of contact, I would say. Yeah, so I was with them through that entire journey from when I started, which was January 2019. Until now, I'm still actually with them.
Wow. All right. And then I also had another question, because there's so many ceremonies or things, like for example, the Basi ceremony, and there's one for wishing someone good luck for traveling, someone for health. Did you prioritize showing them in Laos what sort of average Lao person did in their life? Or did you kind of overextend that and say, this is what we did for these types of days? Like I know there is Oi, Mo Young. like Bunpove, that's something that's super important. So like, is there anything that you like went past to show them?
So we didn't, so we didn't have time to go through all of those specifics, but I did provide some documentation that gave them those specifics. But when we were there, we were only able to experience the Basi, because there's just so much to see, right? I mean, like in any one country, it would take more than a lifetime to really get a chance to know everything. So we definitely had to prioritize certain things to make sure that they got the gist of what the average person might go through as they went through the experience, especially as the experience on the ground. So we have the almsgiving every morning, right? Takbat. And then we have the batsi, which is what we do for guests and even our own family. So those are the two that we honed in on. But I also want to make it clear that in the movie, we didn't choose things just because they were beautiful. Because I think almost all these different aspects of the cultures there are beautiful. So we couldn't get seduced by this idea of just including things that look good visually. We had to sort of balance things, what made sense to the movie and what was true to the lessons of the film. And again, without giving away too much, it's this idea of trust and community. So it had to make sense within that arc. But great question. Thank you. No, wonderful questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Hello, Mr. Arounsack. I want to say that I was able to get the film from Disney Plus, and it was pretty nice. I mean, and I have read a lot of reviews, not to spoil anything, but comparing it to Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I do like, but at the same time, I kind of feel bad because a lot of time people call it too similar just because, it's Asian. And for me, a lot fan bases can be, sometimes, but when I didn't really think too much about it at first, but then as I continued to, I got kind of disappointed when they were describing the lands, calling them Fang and Talon, and not like, and I'm like, really? They couldn't have done like any Vietnamese or Indonesian names? I mean, not to say that you guys didn't think that, but I was just kind of surprised that they didn't, refer to these lands in like Southeast Asian languages,
Sure. So just, I think one thing to keep in mind is this idea that none of these clans or groups represent any one specific culture, right? They represent different parts of the dragon. So they're parts of the dragon. That's the theme that we wanted to incorporate, right? This river that has these different parts. And so the names of these different clans correspond to a body part of the dragon herself.
Makes sense. And I apologize if I butchered the name of the comments, but I didn't know about Krabi Kabong. Did I pronounce it right?
Close.
Oh, thank goodness. Yeah, I didn't really know about the martial art before being introduced to this film.
And I think that's one of the wonderful aspects is that we get to introduce these amazing and vibrant dimensions of the region in this film, and people who are, I know quite a few friends from the region that weren't aware of the types of martial arts that we have in the region and the variation that we have. So again, if it's a piece that gets us to lean forward, to engage the region, I think it serves as a great invitation to learn more, even within the Southeast Asians themselves.
All right, we have a couple more questions. I have two ready to go. Number one, will there be a sequel?
Oh gosh, that is a wonderful question. Next question. The answer is just to be completely honest, I don't know if there's going to be a sequel. I honestly don't know.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. Never know. Next question I have is, how did you go about naming other dragons?
Oh, so some of those names came from some Sanskrit origins. So our linguists really worked hard on that. The names all do have meaning. So they are Sanskrit based, some of them. So that would be the answer.
Awesome. And I think there's one more question in the chat. How did Disney Pixar have the good taste and good fortune to find you for this consultative role?
Was that question asked by Todd?
Yeah, Todd, yeah.
Well, his check's in the mail. His check's in the mail. I don't even know how to answer that question. I was referred to this project by a friend. They had reached out to a mutual friend who was a professor, and she referred them to me, and we started a conversation. The first person I spoke to was Scott Sakamoto, and he's an unsung hero to this. And I appreciate Scott, if you're listening out there, wherever you are. Thank you.
Okay, and then we have one more question. I think this will be the last one, so it seems like a pretty good question. Of the entire production, what are you most proud of?
Gosh, that is a good question. It's hard to pin down one thing. So I'm not saying I'm the most proud of this, because there's a lot of things I'm proud of. I think one thing that does come to mind, so it's one of the many things I'm proud of, is a chance, is this idea that we blew the hinges off of this idea that we created a conversation starter for a film about Southeast Asia. And I think it's a bold conversation starter, this piece. And I hope there are more films that are like this. So that's what I would be most proud of, is that we got to, on this world stage, we got to make an impact and a bold statement and create a conversation starter. So we got a chance to start something, right? So that's what I would be proud of, is that we created this ripple.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, all right. Well, thank you very much again, Dr. Arounsack. Thank you for being here and sharing so much insights with the movie and a lot of the details about how it went and how it happened. So again, if you guys are out there, give them a virtual round of applause in the chat, or however you can. Let's go ahead and do that right now. Before I get to our winner of our raffle, I just want to remind you guys of a few things. Please check out our Student Life social media pages for our Asian Pacific Month highlight post. We will have them all throughout the rest of the month. I also want to invite all of you to our event tomorrow, which is Asian American Perspectives on Anti-Asian Hate. It'll be on tomorrow, May 4th at 7 p.m. And then I will have in the chat right now the event Zoom and the Facebook event on there. This event really is about learning the history of anti-Asian racism, model minority stereotypes, Asian identity, and hear from panelists about their perspective on anti-Asian hate. Okay, so if you guys are able to join us for that, go ahead and do so. And I just want to let the winner know. So I spun the wheel, random generator of all the people that have signed in, and the winner of our raffle is Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, you will be receiving an email from Lily. Make sure you check your email when you you signed into the event. You'll receive an email with more direction on what's next. So thank you again, everyone, for being here. Hope you all have a great night and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Mr. Ali, just kind of at the beginning of the video, I apologize if I was laughing because it was because of the scene with Noi.
That's okay. That's okay. No worries.
Yeah, because I saw the film and Mr. Kashani, if you're there, about the talk tomorrow, are people like Daniel Day Kim gonna make an appearance somehow, or is he not available?
Who is that?
Daniel Day Kim.
I'm not sure. I don't think he will be on. I'm pretty sure he's. I don't know if he's going to be on the talk for that. He will join us. But just stop by the event. You'll be able to see if he's on there. So.
Yeah, but I really like tonight's presentation.
Great. Thank you for stopping by. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you all for being here. You all have a wonderful night. Lily, can you end the recording or the stream?
Night.
Good night.